So hi, this is the Drupal Core Cross Initiatives meeting for the February 22nd, 2018. And what we do on these meetings is we try to have all core initiatives represented and review their progress since the last meeting, and more importantly, figure out if there's any blockers that others can help with or that I can help escalate further up or crosswise or however needed. And we have a notes document for that, and I usually try to tweet the video recording and the notes document at the same time. We also, I think, have the initiatives alphabetically ordered. Yes. So we would start with API first, but we don't have any representation from API first. And I'm not sure that I would be able to provide anything on this one, so we'll probably need to say there's no information at this time. I believe there's some nice improvements in 8.5, but other than that, I'm not aware if they are blocked. We're also not represented for JavaScript. What happened for JavaScript, though, is Angie joined the JavaScript team. So Angie is an initiative coordinator for the JavaScript team. And that's a thing that the JavaScript team requested, by the way. And Angie helped formulate the roadmap, the team going forward. So if you go to drupal.org/core/roadmap, and there are some draft goals for 8.6.0, and the JavaScript modernization stuff, I thought Angie put it there, but it's not true. So I believe that Angie posted the JavaScript modernization roadmap, but it was not there. So I will look in my logs where it is. But basically, Angie helped formulate the team a lot of goals for 8.6, which are ambitious, but why not? Yeah, that's actually in a separate Google Doc. So I will put that Google Doc in this Google Doc so we can cross-link all of our Google Docs, which is always fun. Eventually will be posted somewhere. So 8.6 goals for the recording include using Nightwatch to allow testing JavaScript with JavaScript, proof of concept scaffolding for React admin theme, and creating a library of React components for the admin theme, reactifying the permissions page as a proof of concept, allow routes to be seamlessly passed back and forth between React and Drupal, exposing non-standard endpoints, for example, modules and permissions, so that you can expose the full admin stuff on the application, extending the config schema system to allow auto-generation of forms, which is a dream come true, for me at least, and implementing and enforcing via ASLint the Airbnb coding standards for existing Core.js. So that's a lot of stuff for such a short release. And then for further, Drupal 8.7 plus would be auto-generating config entity forms in JavaScript, experimental React-based admin theme, and auto-generate content entity forms in JavaScript. So both config and content entity forms auto-generated in JavaScript. That's a lot of, but that's some ways off. So that's at least the draft roadmap. It will be eventually integrated in the 8.6 goals, which is also a draft. And I'm not aware if they have challenges, so we can say no. So that's that. And then layout. I don't think anybody arrived for layout, so layout got both layout builder and field layout as beta in 8.5. So both are included. And that's it, basically. So they're beta experimental. You can enable them. You can move stuff around in your entity forms. Stuff may be broken because it's experimental and everything, but that's all there is. So both layout builder and once again, team did not respond. Yeah, we have people from media.
We have me from media.
Yes. Hi.
Hello, everybody. So yeah, media is in an interesting spot right now. One thing that is inaccurate about this document is that media module is not yet shown on the UI. It absolutely is. We had a minimal solution, as the document puts it, that allowed us to basically just show it in the UI, even though it is still very Drupal-y. It is still not great. But this also kind of frees us up to basically go right for the gold in 8.6 and try to get the media library, which was built as a prototype in Berlin a couple of years ago, to actually get the media library spruced up and into core. So work on that. We have a clear that the product managers all like. And the only reason that work hasn't really started on that yet is because the person I would like to get working on that is Sam Mortensen, who is wrapped up right now with some other 8.5 stuff, I think. So when I can get his time, that's a thing that's our main goal for 8.6, is to have a media library which integrates with the field UI and the field API, so that you can actually have a proper media reuse experience, except instead of the sort of very Drupal-y crappy thing that we have right now. So that's what we want to do for 8.6. And then in 8.7 going forward, our main goal is WYSIWYG integration with that media library. And that's challenging. There's a lot of questions that haven't been answered there, but we're really going to target that for 8.7. If we get anything done there for 8.6, great. But if we don't, we're targeting it for 8.7. So that's where we're at right there. Pretty good spot, I think. And I just have to kind of work it out about getting Sam's time on that and other contributor time to spruce up the media library. Since, as I said, it's written, there's a prototype of it already. Yeah, that's kind of where we're at. Any questions?
Is the media plan shared or public or shareable? Or
it probably is shareable in public. I'm just trying to figure out where the hell it is. Give me 1 second here. I'm pretty sure I made it public. Just go into my Google Docs and do that. Oh yeah, no, I can give you guys this. Yeah, okay, media 8.6 roadmap. Yeah, here you go. That's the Google Doc with the roadmap there.
We'll post Google Docs, more Google Docs.
Yeah, and yeah, this is sort of, if you go into there, you'll see that like everything we're doing is based off of a wireframe that was built years ago, or that was defined years ago. So we're trying to just implement the wireframe, as it were. Mm-hmm. Another thing that may happen, hopefully for 8.6, probably for 8.6, is the ability for media to support remote media assets. So things like YouTube videos are like the primary use case there, Vimeo, any media that's served up by a third party using the OEmbed standard. There's a patch for that. It ran into some potential security issues and therefore hasn't seen a whole lot of work for a few weeks now. And Christian Fritsch, I think, is the guy who's mostly been working on that. So hopefully we'll be able to pick that back up and land it for 8.6. And that would be a really, really big win, because then we could ship a media type in core or in standard that's like, hey, YouTube video. That'd be pretty badass. So that's what we're hoping to. That's the thing we're hoping to do. I think it's more like a second priority or something, second or third priority for 8.6 for media.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. That's all I got.
Cool. So I think out of the box, what it was just started integrating media in their 8.6 branch. Are there any questions from out of the box for media? Do you want to talk about that? Or?
We just created an issue to start discussing where, how, just to start talking about it, because we don't know if we should do something. For example, if someone just disables the module, disables media, for example, what should happen? I mean, if you have a media field and you just disable media, then you just have an image field, or we just use media for other kind of fields. So
I think that if you had a media field and then you turned off media, you would either be prevented from doing it by the config dependency system, or a bunch of your fields would just be deleted because of the config dependency system. That would be my guess. I'm pretty sure that if you are creating, if you have a media field and you've put content in it, then obviously you can't just get rid of the provider modules without breaking a bunch of stuff. I don't think it would fall back to image fields or do anything that elegant. I don't think that would even be possible. And the reason I say that is because media as a concept is more open-ended than an image field is. Because a media could be much more than just an image. It could be, it could be a video, it could be an audio file, it could be a PDF, it could be an Instagram. So without that kind of certainty that it's an image, we can't just fall back gracefully to image fields. So yeah, I think if you had media turned on and you put a bunch of media data into your site and then you turned off media, you would break a bunch of things. Yeah.
Okay.
I hope that's doesn't come as bad news.
So maybe do you think that it should be smarter just using media for some kind of fields? Like, I don't know, for example, adding a video or something like that, or make it actually a dependency for Umami installation program?
I think that the smartest thing the out-of-the-box initiative could do about this is to use media where media is really the right tool for the job. So if you're just going to upload images into a field, for now, I would say stick with image fields for precisely this reason. But if you want to start using videos or more advanced kinds of media, then you would have no choice but to use a media field. So my feeling is, for the out-of-the-box initiative, stick with image fields for now. Because at the moment, media fields are they're not yet the preferred solution in core. The aim is for them eventually to be, but it's not there yet. So I think that out of the box should stick with sort of the traditional tools for the time being.
But so eventually it would be, so that would be the goal for 8.6, right? So sooner or later, because what I'm saying is out of the box and media will improve in parallel in 8.6, or will change in parallel in 8.6, and out of the box will need to adapt to whatever media's end goal is, and at the same time. So out of the box doesn't really have the time to wait out media because it may be getting together later than out of the box has the time to adapt.
Well, in that case, okay. I mean, I think that where out of the box would benefit from using media is once media has, the media library in and has a really cool reuse case worked out, then out of the box would really benefit from that, because then you can actually go demo oh, and here's how you change to a different media thing, and here's our cool media library and all this kind of stuff. So if that's going to be the case and our target is 8.6 for the media library, then yeah, maybe now would be a good time to go using image or go to use media fields for Umami. Given that, and I know I just reversed everything I just said.
Because the problem that we are also thinking is that a lot of people is asking that we try to be I don't know, update friendly. I mean, if you have, it's not our goal, but some people is actually asking for having the profile being able to be updated from Drupal versions, from I don't know, for example, 8.6 to 8.7, and that doesn't, anything breaks in the middle. So if in the future we think that media is going to be the best tool to work, the best option, maybe just starting to use it right now could be better.
Well, the goal is for it eventually to replace file and image fields. So yeah, that's. I mean, here's a question, Christina. Is the out-of-the-box initiative about just demoing like the front end, like a completed site, or is it also used to demo like the authoring experience in the back end? Because from the front end perspective, there's not a whole lot of difference between media fields and image fields, except for the fact that media supports more types of media. But from the back end, there's a huge difference. So that's a thing to consider as well.
The goal is that Drupal testers, the people that it's going to decide if they are going to use Drupal or another tool, use the out-of-the-box to decide that. So I guess not only the front-end team is important here, it's also the administration.
Yeah, it's like you're using whatever we would suggest as a best practice in core.
Yeah, that will definitely be media and definitely be the media library. So yeah, I guess go ahead and adopt it. And that'll put even more of a fire under our collective asses to make it right in 8.6.
Thanks.
Okay.
So that's for media, I guess.
Yep.
Unless there's other questions for media, then migrate is next in alphabetical.
And guess who talks about that?
This is notes from the previous meeting. We celebrated Migrate API stable and Migrate UI all but stable and lots of docs cleanups, and there was a sprint.
Yep.
And yeah, and we wanted to get the word out and communicate about it, which is, I think, where we have news.
Yeah, we were actually just in a call like an hour ago, trying to hammer out some of the messaging about how we're going to tell people that Migrate API is stable and that Migrate Drupal is very close to stable. There's only, as the document says, there's really only one or two major issues surrounding I18N that are blocking Migrate Drupal from being stable, and that has to do with I mean, I won't bore you with the details, but like it has to do with when you've migrated translated content, how do you make sure that entity references to that content are still valid? And that, it's like a simple question that opened up an entire Pandora's box of problems. The good news is we have a strategy for fixing that. And there are patches, and so that's kind of in progress. And I think that its chances of landing in 8.6 are good. But I always say that at the beginning of a new release cycle. So ask me in 3 months. But yeah, I think that's really one of the final blockers to Migrate Drupal being stable, if not the final blocker to it. And yeah, so things are actually looking pretty good on the Migrate front for the most part.
Yeah, I think Lucas posted also a case study of migrating, and Evolving Lab posted slides from their session, which I'm not finding on their blog right now, but so we discussed that it would be nice to get some case studies out, and that happened. It would still be good to reach out to more people, I think. Yeah, in case.
Yeah, so I think a lot of what's sort of happening there in Migrate these days is about getting the message out that Migrate API is stable, and telling people how do I upgrade my site, how do I use it, which involves distilling a lot of weird complexity and stuff, just because the Drush tools are so weird, and the UI, as the doc mentioned, is blocked by Migrate Drupal from being stable. So it's a messaging thing.
Yeah. I'm looking for what Lucas posted, but I'm not yet finding that one. But yeah, he's posting a lot about the commerce work that he's also doing with operations. Cool. So This issue that we've been waiting on last time certainly landed. I'm just making sure to check, of course, for the ITNN to move forward. Yep. Cool. Out of the box.
Okay, so for us, the big change we've had is that now the box is committed, and it's actually hidden, and there's a discussion to know what are the issues, what are the things that are that will make it unhidden. So we are working on that. And about our challenger right now, it will be the integration with other modules or other stuff. For example, field layout, media, settings tray, and to showcase as much stuff as we can. So that's it. And we are actually still working with beta blockers. And finally, the other thing, I think it was related with media, it's to add CSV migration to core, I think. And that's all for us. That's all the things, the important things that happened.
So the CSV is for 8.6, so that there's a more standard way to import content?
Sorry?
So the CSV migration would be for importing content in the installer.
Yeah. So that's the at the moment we've got effectively a bunch of specific pieces of code doing that import process, so that we're steering clear of using migrate. But the original version that Gareth developed actually used migrate. And I think that this issue is effectively related to getting what we need into core, so that we can take advantage of what's already there in core.
I think it would be completely appropriate to add, CSV support to core. Migrate Plus has long supported this, and moving that to core wholesale with just a little bit of tweaks to get it like core ready would be, I think, something like with out of the box behind it. I think that would totally happen. I think it can happen relatively quickly by core standards for 8.6. So +1 to that idea.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, I don't know if we have issues open for that or not, but
Yes, yeah, the 293.1739.
I'm sorry, 283.1739.
293.1739 is the issue.
293.1739.
1739. Yeah, so let's bring migrate source CSV to core.
All right, I am going to follow that and see about me.
We also have some successes in the sense that there was a video shared, I think it was either yesterday or early today, that Moderation Note module is using Umami for its demo, which is great. Just actually seeing Umami in action for someone's, other contributed project. It's brilliant.
Yeah, Sam also said that Sam Mortensen is working on that, and he said that he would use Umami to test all his other country modules, which is great.
Yep. And Gabe Solis, a colleague of us in the Office of CTO, who's also working on JSON API, replied to that and saying something along the lines of, well, that would be actually also really handy for reporting JSON API bugs, for example, because then we actually have a concrete data model that is the same for everyone. So to reproduce problems and explain them. So even in that sort of capacity, it's very useful.
To reproduce bugs against, yeah.
Yep.
Cool. That's great. So from last time, I've had is to verify layouts and media status, and now we can tell I haven't gotten back to the team on that day, unfortunately. Now we can tell the media is in core and anyone can enable it. But it's, as we discussed earlier on the call, there's some missing UX that would be nice and hopefully will be developed in parallel for out of the box. And layouts is there, but it's experimental beta. So media is stable, settings tray is stable. So I think those would be easier to justify if the umami is not experimental by itself, right? This is another discussion. So layouts would still be experimental in 8.5 for sure, and 8.6 we don't know yet. So that may be too early to tell if you can rely on that without relying on experimental modules.
Yeah, and this is, from what I've understood, this is the main thing that's playing into that whole conversation about when umami can become unhidden, because of course there is that conversation going on about
Everything.
the supporting that upgrade process. That Gabor, I noticed that you'd commented on as well.
Yeah, that's a can of worms.
If we change something,
We don't want, but yeah. So I think we know some of the blockers for showing the demo, but they are probably still in the process of being identified. The migrate CSV is still keeping it here just in case. Don't have anyone from PHP Unit. We don't have anyone from settings tray anymore, but I don't think there's any significant work going on with settings tray, given that it's stable. There's the integration with out of the box that Christina talked about earlier. That's going on, needs work right now. I think that would be nice, given that layout and settings tray uses the same UI concepts and everything, so that it could seamlessly work together eventually.
I do know that Ted Bowman is working on making settings tray use WebDriver for JavaScript tests, because that's happening, but under the hood stuff.
We started that. Ted and I talked to Ted yesterday, and it's going well and easy-ish. So, but there are some differences between WebDriver and the old Phantom implementation. So.
That's great. And translation overrides are still outstanding to be done. So since we have two people from the JavaScript initiative, do we want to jump back over to JavaScript? So the only thing I talked about JavaScript is there's this roadmap that I copied over the Google Doc. Hopefully it's not too private.
Uh-oh.
No, it's public AF.
Yeah.
Cool. And yeah, so what else do you want to share? How can we help?
I think we made a lot of work for the API First initiative.
Cool.
So, hi, Wim. How are you?
Hi.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to sync on that at some point, but one of our long-term goals is we'd like to auto-generate React forms in our fancy new theme based on config entities. So we need CRUD support for those at some point. And we also talked about the possibility of annotating them. I know, I'm sorry. We also talked about the possibility of annotating them with a little bit more data. Like, you know, maybe someone wants to display their form with a select instead of a radio buttons, but it's kind of hard to say what that should be based on just that data. So that's another thing we want to start thinking about as well.
I think also validations probably need to be factored in there somehow to annotate with validators, etc. Yeah.
Yeah, we can fill 5 calls just with that. So I'll keep it brief. Config entity support for REST is limited to reading. for the reason that we don't have validation yet, as Gabor pointed out, and adding validation to it is a massive, massive undertaking, which Daniel actually did already start, Daniel Veen. He laid some of the foundations, but now we actually need to go into every config entity type and add validation support for it. So that is the very big blocker. So that's going to take a long time, is a short version.
Yeah, hence long-term goals.
Yes.
I have a really potentially silly question. When you said that's supported in REST, we were hoping to use JSON API for this stuff. So does that mean if it, like, will this translate across to that? Or
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes. So in JSON API, it's the same sort of limitation and same sort of behavior. And they will work very similarly. They will just have the JSON API wrapping around it, essentially, because config entities are like essentially just key value mappings, and they will both contain those key value mappings.
Can we have like can we go one by one, and if we flag config entities that support validation, and then we can support them?
Yes, that is the proposal. It is currently blocked on, I think, actually something that Andre helped out with a few months ago. Essentially, having some way to detect some way to flag which config entity types do support validation and which ones don't. We don't have that capability right now. That's metadata or an API that we do not have. And there is a proposal for that, but it's currently blocked on, I think, reviews from Entity Field API maintainers. I don't remember when it was last touched, sometime in the past 6 weeks or so. But so work is being done on that front, but it's still, a long road ahead. But it would be great, for example, to start off with the one config entity type that would matter the most to the work that Sally and others are doing. So do you have such an example of the one that would matter most?
Yeah, so we were thinking of working on the permissions page. And that's an interesting one because although all the permissions are stored in config entities, there are all the permissions that aren't saved are not going to be available. So we also need to figure out how we're going to have these like custom endpoints to provide us with like weird bits of data like that.
Okay, so roles essentially is the thing that matters most for you for this use case.
Right now, I think that the roles and permissions thing is next on our list of the first thing to make in the new sort of React-powered admin theme. So
makes sense. Okay, I did hear you say something along the lines of automatically generate forms. Did I hear that correctly?
You did.
Yes.
So the idea is you would be using config entities in your module for your config form, and then like most of the time you probably aren't going to want to make a fancy React thing. You could just use what we provide you by default, but you also have the option of overriding it. So if you want to build something amazing and whizzy, then you could provide a custom React component instead.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to get at. Like automatically generated forms, I don't think ever made anybody particularly happy about the user experience, but it is a good starting point, and it's better to have a form that works than no form at all, of course. And it sounds like that's also the direction you're thinking in.
Yeah, there's definitely simple cases, I think, of some forms, and also there's the validation stuff and everything need to be done either way. Right, and so that would help in having a backend that can then take whatever form you want.
Yeah. And then even more long term, we discussed like what's the interface that everyone would really love to upgrade, and everyone really much said Field UI. So I hope we've like co-opted Christina into getting the ball rolling on thinking about what we'd like to do with that whilst we're working on these other things in the meantime.
Yep. So yeah, I think the number. So for me personally, and for the few, like the two people currently actively working on API first in Octo, in Office of the CTO at Acquia, What we are working on right now is JSON API, getting JSON API to a point where it can move into core. And so we are currently not actively working on config entity stuff because there's only so much one can do, of course. But yeah, it sounds like you both want JSON API and config entity validation or config entity support. So maybe we should look into shifting some of our focus to that. If anybody knows people who want to help out or want to help out themselves, that would be, of course, lovely. That would help accelerate things. But it is definitely going to be, well, maybe if we can get that one foundational thing that indicates whether a config entity type supports validation or not. Once we can get that in, then I think working on, for example, the role config entity and getting that to a point where we can flip it to yes, it supports validation. That would be like getting there would be potentially doable in the not too long time period.
That's exciting. I think also, like, bear in mind, this doesn't necessarily block us from doing the UI work because we can make fake data endpoints, and then hopefully meet in the middle at some point.
I encourage you to do that.
Yeah. I was just going to say that I think that it is. I mean, and me, I don't know if you feel the same way, Sally, but that getting JSON API into core is perhaps the higher priority, and we can always work with the fake data, up until the point where it's available.
Yeah, so, and that actually brings me to a question I wanted to ask, because I've been thinking about this myself lately. So with core REST, there are some severe limitations. For example, you cannot, just by installing the REST module, it is impossible for JavaScript to go and ask a REST endpoint, hey, can I get all the comments that are published for Node 5? That's impossible. You have to go and create a REST view or a view with a REST export display, and so on and so on. And then you have to configure it just the right way, and so on, which is painful. With JSON API, you can actually, out of the box, just once it is installed, have JavaScript talk to it and say, give me all comments for this node, please, and you will get it. So the thing is that I'm getting at, everything that we talked about so far is always config related. But once you go in the land of contents entities, much more is possible on a much shorter term without the need for additional hacks. Is there an area that you see that would also be exciting and also yield a big improvement?
Well, like node authoring forms, but I think there's a lot of complexity in there that we might not want to deal with just yet, which is why we wanted to start somewhere a bit smaller. So honestly, I think we have so much work on our plate right now, it might not be worth thinking about that yet. And I was also working on the assumption that this would all be built on JSON API. Although, I'm curious what would happen about these weird data points that we need. Like, what are all the permissions available from Drupal? Because JSON API isn't meant to deal with stuff like that because it's just for entities, right? So are we going to have the REST module turned on in order to make these custom endpoints? I don't have answers to any of these things.
I don't have answers yet. It's a great question. But also in REST, we would not support this out of the box. You could create custom REST resource plugins in order to expose those things, but it would still need to be custom. Again, because by default, all Drupal core provides you is entity data, not these kinds of odd bits, if you will. So,
yeah, and I think I'm fine with that being custom because they are all weird custom things. I don't think we have to like have a generalized solution, but as long as it doesn't sound a bad thing to do, then that all sounds good.
Yeah, I think we need to jointly figure out what makes sense, essentially, because yes, it's an unanswered question for sure.
Cool. And then like the other thing we've been working on is Nightwatch, getting that JavaScript testing into core. It's very close. I think like a bunch of us have all tested the install scripts and that's all working. If anyone wants to help out, we're working over here.
I got the link. So
yeah, hang on, I'm doing it. There we go. We're working over there. So everything is being pull requested into pull request number 1 down the bottom there. I'll add a label when I get a chance. Yeah, so if you want to go and test it, that would be great. We just added support for allowing modules and themes and anything else to add their own custom Nightwatch tests too, which is kind of cool. Yeah, so that's like pretty much ready. And then we of course have the fun task of writing actual tests to test actual things.
Converting all the tests too that we have. Is that the part of the plan, Kelly? I don't know if we decided to do that or not.
I think there's lots of things we don't have tests for, and I was thinking of Angie's like mega list that she manually does. So I think if we could automate Angie first, she'd be happy. She never has to do that again.
So which branch Angie is being worked on GitHub though?
It's the Nightwatch branch. So if you look at the very bottom pull request, it's the main branch on the GitHub thing.
So Angie automations happening.
Yes.
And about, since we're pasting links, sorry to distract, maybe this is not the right time. Did you wrap up about Nightwatch, or is there something else?
Well, yeah, I think that's it, unless anyone has any questions about it.
No questions?
Nope. Okay.
Okay, so I mentioned, since we talked about config entity support and the #1 blocker there being in Entity Field API, this is the issue for that. That's the one that Andre, for example, helped out with, that was discussed at DrupalCon Vienna. But that itself is now blocked on a new issue, or on a different issue still. And either one could definitely use reviews to move forward. So if you are looking into that, that's the place to be.
Okay, Wim. Do you want to do API first next, since you're on the mic anyway?
Sure. I don't know when we last did this, but for API first, the focus is currently on JSON API, as I mentioned before. That is moving forward really well. We ported over all the test coverage that core has. So all the crazy edge cases and ensuring that DX is good in case of a bad request, that you get a sensible error response. Those kinds of things have all been ported to the JSON API module with fewer variations to test because there's not many formats to test. JSON API supports any authentication provider, and we're not testing with every single one like core REST does. So some simplification, but the situations and scenarios are the same or as similar as possible. So that is very important, that that can now move forward faster with more confidence, so that we know that it's at least as good as Drupal core's REST, and then with all the JSON API additional capabilities. And Gabe is working currently on adding test coverage for collection queries, for example, so things that REST doesn't support. So that is moving forward well. In core lands, currently not much is happening, but what has already happened is, for example, the ability to get the parent of a taxonomy term, which is pretty important for certain use cases. Another thing that is currently RTBC is file uploads, which is kind of important if you want to do something like, media, or just articles with images. That will actually become possible in the not too distant future, hopefully. Well, should be in 8.6. Won't be in 8.5 for sure. So those areas are moving forward. And then the list of things has gotten considerably shorter since 8.5, which is good. But right now, the focus is on JSON API, as I said. And hopefully config entity stuff can start moving forward again as well. That's, I think, the short version.
Any way we can help, or any cross dependencies with others?
Well, dependencies on Entity Field API stuff, which is not a initiative, which is therefore not represented here.
I know.
Let me check real quick. So the issue to follow, if you want to follow along what is happening in core land, is this issue, the top priorities for 8.6. I don't think that there is a blocker on anybody else who is on the call here. So definitely no blockers on other initiatives.
Okay. Yeah, we've had this conversation that why entity field API is not an initiative with Tim over Twitter, I think, or something. Other medium.
Well, actually, that's something that comes to mind. It's not on this list, but at some point we are going to need and want revision support because neither Core REST nor JSON API nor GraphQL support revisions. So you can't retrieve revisions or create a new one off of a draft revision that already exists, for example. So that is going to be something that people are going to want at some point, or some developers are going to need for their use case. So that is a maybe sort of dependency on the workflow initiative because they know that area obviously really, really well. But it's not really a hard dependency or a hard blocker because we're not actively working on that. But of course, if it would be wonderful for them to propose what to them is a sensible way for us to support revisions, for example. Like, what is your perspective on how that should work? Any such input would be more than welcome if you have thoughts about that. And doesn't need to be here and now, of course.
Do you have an issue for that?
I haven't thought about it yet, but I can start thinking about it.
Wonderful. And there is no concrete issue for it yet, no, because it just seemed so far out so far, but I can definitely create one.
Yeah. That would be good.
I will create one and I will send it to Andre via IRC.
Perfect. Cool. Okay, so we got caught up with the people who got missed, and then the final one is workflows.
Hey, so in workflow land, not so much happened since the last meeting. We're still waiting for reviews on the workspaces patch. Lee Rollins started a very long review, which was already addressed. So yeah, we're just looking for more eyes on the code. We still think it's alpha quality at least, so it should be good for 8.6 at any time. And since we can't do anything on that front, we started on other plans for 8.6, which is for now the revision 3 support, something which would enable workspaces to work together with content moderation, for example. Because right now you can either enable content moderation on an entity type, but you won't be able to use it in workspaces, and vice versa. So we have a plan how to get that working together. Apart from that, nothing really eventful or worth mentioning, I think. I mean, of course, this will be quite big, revision 3 stuff.
Yeah. Did you get help on the off-canvas issue from frontenders or not yet?
No, not yet.
Okay.
Yeah, I forgot about that. That would be good to have.
Yeah.
That's still the only beta blocker for workspaces.
So I see Matt reviewed that in January.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of JavaScript.
Yeah.
And Ted in January.
I think Ted said in the last meeting that he has some people who he knows, some people who might want to look at it, but we didn't really get in touch since then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so at the moment we're about planning and starting stuff for 8.6 beyond workspaces.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm looking at Matt's review on this one, and he did
Can you post the issue?
Yeah, it's 2916781. And also putting in chat here. Sorry, I haven't.
It's fine. I was just like, what?
So that's those all minor things that he posted. I'm not sure if that means that there's no other non-minor things, or it was just no time at the time to review it for significant things. I don't know.
I think there's a comment from a team there. So we know that some things are not really working properly, or janky animations and stuff like that. But that's just because you don't have a front-end person in the initiative.
I can look at this again today or tomorrow. I can look at this. So
thanks, Matt.
Great.
Yeah, no problem. On the list.
Yeah. It's definitely progressing. So basically, you need more eyes on the code and work on.
Yes. Mostly on workspaces for now. So we have it early in the 8.6 dev cycle.
Okay. So we can try to do a push around that over whatever, Twitter, etc.
That will help.
Maybe Drupal groups.drupal.org/core. I don't know. We'll see if we can get something there.
Are you looking for reviews from specific people for the Workspaces pledge? Like, is there somebody who has lots of background knowledge in revisions and workflows that would be better suited to see through any potential problems?
That would be Catch, I think, Nathaniel Catchfall. And probably Lee Rowlands as well. But any review is welcome to improve the code. So.
Okay. I think Catch was already reviewing it. Is that right?
Yeah.
So he
wants to take another look at it. I suppose he didn't have time.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of stuff going on around it.
Yeah.
Getting the RC out, which is almost practically out. Yeah.
Yeah, but like I said, any bit of review helps.
Cool.
We'll try to, but I can't promise.
Cool. So I think that's all the initiatives we have. Great stuff. I like these meetings where the JavaScript can discuss with API first, and media with out of the box, and migrate with out of the box, and all these things. It's great to be able to figure out our shared goals and directions and ideas. Cool. So I will try to follow up on whatever I promised, and in case you need help, which is totally fine, just feel free to ping me, and I will try to connect you with the right people and see if I can get some stuff moving. Great work, everyone, by the way. So 8.5 is really great, and all this stuff lining up for 8.6 is even better. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah, 8.6, so this is going to be a mega release.
Yeah. As Adam said, this is all super impressive stuff. Much respect to all. Yes, echo that. Cool. So thanks, everyone. See you next time.
All right, cheers.
Cheers. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.